The studio lights are too bright. That's the first thing Maria notices when she adjusts her daughter's collar backstage at the local morning show. It's one of those community programs that fills dead air on weekday mornings, the kind where local kids show their drawings and the hosts ooh and ah with rehearsed enthusiasm. Sophia clutches her rolled-up paper, her knuckles white around the cardboard tube. She's been asking to come here for 3 weeks, ever since she heard they were doing a segment called My Hero. Maria thought she'd draw her father, or maybe her grandmother. She didn't expect the quiet insistence, the way Sophia refused to show her the drawing until this moment. The host, a woman in her 50s with shellacked hair and a blazer 2 seasons out of style, crouches down and asks Sophia who she drew. Sophia doesn't answer right away. She unrolls the paper slowly and the camera zooms in. The drawing is crude in the way all 7-year-old art is crude, but there's something deliberate about it. A man's face, angular and weathered, dark circles under the eyes, rendered in charcoal smudges. A scar above the left eyebrow, a thin line Sophia drew with careful precision. The man isn't smiling. He looks tired. He looks real. The host hesitates. This isn't the bright, cheerful hero drawing she expected. But Sophia starts talking before anyone can redirect her. Her voice is small but steady. This is the man who gave back Tico. He didn't say anything. He just put him in my hands and walked away. I didn't get to say thank you. In the control room, someone leans forward. In a coffee shop 3 blocks away, an older man glances up from his newspaper at the screen mounted in the corner. His hand freezes halfway to his cup. In an apartment across town, a woman washing dishes turns off the water and stares at the television, soap suds dripping from her fingers. The scar, the specific, undeniable scar above the left eyebrow. 6 weeks earlier, the afternoon had that particular weight that comes before rain. The sky was bruised purple at the edges, and the wind carried the smell of wet pavement even though it hadn't started yet. Daniel was cutting through the park on his way back from another failed job interview, his 4th that month. The folder under his arm held a resume that was starting to feel like a fiction. 6 months since the layoff, 8 months since his brother stopped returning his calls, a year since he'd spoken to his daughter. He wasn't looking for anything when he saw it, just trying to get home before the rain started. But there it was, abandoned on a bench near the empty playground, a stuffed dog, worn soft from years of handling. One ear was darker than the other from being chewed. The stitching along the belly was coming loose. Someone had drawn a tiny red heart on its paw with permanent marker. Daniel picked it up without thinking. The fabric was still warm. Whoever dropped it hadn't been gone long. He looked around the park. Most people had already scattered, sensing the coming storm. But near the far gate, he could see a woman hurrying away, a little girl in a yellow raincoat stumbling to keep up. The girl kept looking back over her shoulder. He could have called out. Should have, probably. But his voice felt rusty from disuse, and something about the moment made him move instead of speak. He walked quickly, not quite running, closing the distance between them. The first drops of rain hit his shoulders. The woman was fumbling with an umbrella that wouldn't open. The little girl was starting to cry. Daniel reached them just as the woman got the umbrella up. He held out the stuffed dog without a word. The girl's face transformed, that instant shift from distress to relief that only children can manage so completely. She grabbed the dog and held it against her chest with both arms. The woman looked up at Daniel, surprise and gratitude mixing on her face. She started to say something. Daniel shook his head once, a small movement. He was already stepping back. The woman's mouth was still open, but he turned and walked away before she could form the words. He heard the girl say something behind him, but the rain was starting in earnest now, and he kept walking. His shoes squelched through puddles forming in the cracked pavement. By the time he reached the park exit, his shirt was soaked through and his folder was getting damp. The apartment was cold when he got home. The radiator made threatening noises but never quite delivered warmth. Daniel peeled off his wet clothes and hung them over the shower rod, then stood in front of the mirror in his underwear. The scar above his eyebrow caught the dim light. 15 years old, that scar. He'd gotten it when his daughter was 3, helping his brother move furniture. A bookshelf tipped, the corner caught him, and he'd bled all over their mother's carpet. His daughter had cried when she saw the blood. His brother had laughed and called him clumsy. He didn't think about the park again that night, or the stuffed dog, or the way the little girl had held it like it was the only solid thing in the world. The job interview the next morning went like all the others. The HR manager's smile was professional and empty. They thanked him for his time. They'd be in touch. Daniel knew they wouldn't be. He'd been a maintenance supervisor for 11 years before the company restructured. Now he was 52 with experience that didn't translate, and gaps in his resume he couldn't explain without talking about the year he'd spent trying to hold his family together after his wife died. The year he'd failed at it. His daughter was 19 now, living with his brother's family 2 states over. She'd sent one text message when she left. "I need space to figure things out." That was 14 months ago. He'd typed responses dozens of times, deleted all of them. What could he say that wouldn't sound like an excuse? He'd been absent when she needed him, present only in his grief. By the time he'd surfaced enough to see her clearly again, she was already packing. The days had a sameness to them that was almost peaceful in its emptiness. Wake up. Search for jobs he wouldn't get. Walk to the library to use the internet because he'd canceled his home service to save money. Buy whatever was on sale at the corner store. Go home. The apartment was too quiet. Sometimes he turned on the television just to have voices. Sometimes he sat in the dark and counted the cracks in the ceiling. 3 weeks after the park, he was at the library when he heard 2 women talking in the next aisle. One of them was describing a program about local artists, something on the community channel. Her friend sounded skeptical. Daniel was only half listening until he heard, "And this little girl drew the man who returned her stuffed dog. The whole city's trying to figure out who he is." Daniel's hands went still on the keyboard. He could see his reflection in the dark screen of the monitor in front of him, the scar above his eyebrow. He closed his eyes and tried to remember the little girl's face. All he could recall was the yellow raincoat and the way she'd clutched the dog. He'd seen her for maybe 30 seconds. How could she have seen enough to draw him? He left the library without logging off, walked the 6 blocks home in a daze. When he got to his building, there was a notice taped to the door. Rent increase starting next month. $40 more. It might as well have been $400. He was already 2 weeks behind. That night, he dreamed about his daughter. She was 3 years old again, holding his hand in a grocery store. In the dream, he looked down and she was crying, but he couldn't hear why. He tried to ask her what was wrong, but his voice wouldn't work. He kept trying to speak, and she kept crying. And then he woke up in the dark apartment with his throat tight and his eyes burning. The drawing had been posted online. That's what the woman at the soup kitchen told him 4 days later. She was ladling out something that was supposed to be beef stew, her hands steady and practiced. Daniel had started coming here 3 times a week to stretch his food budget. The woman never commented on it, just gave him his portion and sometimes an extra roll if she had them. "It's on all the local Facebook groups," she said, not quite looking at him. "That drawing the little girl did. Everyone's sharing it. They're calling him the Silent Guardian. Isn't that something?" Daniel took his tray to a corner table. The stew was mostly potatoes and carrots, but it was hot. Across from him, an older man with liver spots on his hands was methodically eating crackers from a stack he'd made beside his bowl. Neither of them spoke. That was one of the few good things about this place. Nobody expected conversation. But Daniel's mind wouldn't settle. The Silent Guardian. The phrase felt both distant and uncomfortably close. He wasn't a guardian of anything. He'd barely managed to keep himself upright for the past 2 years. He'd walked away from that little girl without saying a word because speaking felt like too much effort. not because he was trying to be noble. His phone buzzed in his pocket. The battery was at 8%. He'd learned to keep it mostly off to conserve power between charges at the library. The message was from a number he didn't recognize. "Daniel, it's Mike from the plant. Heard you're looking for work. We might have something. Call me." His hands shook slightly as he typed a response. Mike had been a shift supervisor when Daniel was still working. One of the few people who'd said anything when he'd lost his wife. Most people hadn't known what to say, so they'd said nothing. Daniel understood that impulse. He'd become an expert at it himself. The job was part-time maintenance at a storage facility, night shifts, minimum wage, cash under the table because they didn't want to deal with official hiring. It wasn't much, but it was something. Daniel started the following Monday. The facility was on the industrial edge of town, surrounded by chain-link fence and sodium lights that turned everything sickly yellow. His shift was 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. He'd walk the grounds, check locks, change light bulbs, fix whatever small things broke. The manager was a man in his 60s who chain-smoked menthols and fell asleep at his desk by midnight. Daniel didn't mind. The work was mindless and solitary. He could disappear into it. On his third night, he found a family of feral cats living behind Unit 47. The mother was a scrawny tabby with half an ear missing. She had 4 kittens, maybe 5 weeks old. They scattered when he approached, but the mother stood her ground, tail puffed and eyes wild. Daniel crouched low and slow. "It's all right," he heard himself say. The words felt strange in his mouth. How long since he'd spoken to anything living? He started bringing scraps from the soup kitchen. The mother cat learned to tolerate his presence, though she never came close enough to touch. The kittens were bolder. One of them, a gray runt with white paws, would sometimes creep close enough to sniff his fingers. Daniel found himself looking forward to this small interaction, this tiny proof that something trusted him enough to be vulnerable. At home during the day, he tried to sleep but couldn't always manage it. The apartment above his had a toddler who ran back and forth for hours, little feet pounding. The woman next door played soap operas too loud. Once he would have knocked on her door, asked politely if she could turn it down. Now he just lay there and let the noise wash over him. Another layer of static between him and the world. He hadn't told anyone about the job. There was nobody to tell. His brother had left 3 voicemails over the past year. Daniel had listened to each one but never called back. What would he say? That he was living in a studio apartment with a hot plate and a radiator that didn't work? That he ate at a soup kitchen and worked for cash at a storage facility? That he'd become the kind of person who walked away from small acts of kindness because thank you felt like too much weight to carry? The drawing kept spreading. He saw it in a coffee shop window, photocopied and taped to the glass above a handwritten note. "Do you know this man? A child wants to say thank you." He saw it on a telephone pole slightly rain-damaged. He saw it in the window of a diner, and once in the background of a news segment about community connection that played on the television at the laundromat where he washed his clothes every other week. Each time he saw it, something tightened in his chest. The face was both him and not him. The girl had captured something in the eyes, a specific quality of exhaustion and distance, but the face in the drawing looked stronger than he felt, more solid, like someone who made deliberate choices instead of someone who was just trying to get from one day to the next without falling apart. 5 weeks after the television appearance, Daniel was at the library again, filling out applications he knew wouldn't lead anywhere. The woman at the next computer was watching something on YouTube, her headphones not quite containing the sound. He caught fragments of audio, a news anchor saying something about local heroes. The phrase made him grimace. He was logging off when someone tapped his shoulder. He turned to find a young woman, maybe 25, holding a phone toward him. On the screen was the drawing, Sophia's drawing. The woman was smiling, excited. "This is you, isn't it? You're him. The guy from the park. Daniel's mouth went dry. He looked at the screen, then at the woman's face, then back at the screen. He could feel other people in the library turning to look. The question hung in the air between them, and all he could think was how much he wanted to be anywhere else. "I'm sorry," he managed. His voice came out rough. "I think you have the wrong person." He stood quickly, nearly knocking over his chair. The woman called after him, but he was already moving toward the door, his heart pounding in a way that felt dangerous. On the street, he walked fast, head down, hands jammed in his pockets. The afternoon sun was too bright. Everything was too loud. A car horn made him flinch. He made it 2 blocks before he had to stop, lean against a building, force himself to breathe slowly. This wasn't sustainable. That much was clear. Sooner or later, someone would be certain. Someone would take his picture when he wasn't looking and post it online. The city wasn't that big. The story had already spread beyond its borders. He'd seen an article in a regional magazine about the power of small kindnesses, the drawing featured prominently. They'd interviewed child psychologists about the importance of modeling behavior. They'd talked to the mother, who described the moment when her daughter had looked back and seen her beloved Tico was missing, the absolute devastation on her face. The dog's name was Tico. Daniel hadn't known that. Now he did, and the knowledge sat heavy in his chest. The article described how Sophia had barely eaten for 2 days after losing him, how she'd cried herself to sleep, how the mother had called every store and playground and office within walking distance, describing a worn stuffed dog with one darker ear and a red heart on its paw. And then, in the rain, a stranger had returned him. Without a word, without waiting for gratitude, just handed him over and walked away. The mother said she'd been so surprised that she froze. By the time she thought to follow, the man was gone. Sophia had asked about him every day since. Who was he? Why didn't he stay? Where did he go? Daniel read the article 3 times, standing in the corner store where he'd picked up the magazine from a rack near the register. The clerk watched him but didn't say anything. When Daniel put it back without buying it, the clerk just nodded slightly, like he understood that sometimes you needed to read something but couldn't afford to own it. That night at the storage facility, Daniel sat with the cats longer than usual. The mother cat had brought him something, a dead mouse left near his feet. It was an offering, he knew, a sign of trust or gratitude. He picked it up carefully by the tail and disposed of it, then sat back down. The gray kitten climbed onto his lap, tiny claws pricking through his jeans. It weighed almost nothing. Its purr was a small motor against his thigh. "I don't know what I'm doing," he said to the cat. The words echoed slightly in the empty space between storage units. The kitten kneaded his leg, eyes half closed. Daniel put his hand on its back, felt the rapid heartbeat, the delicate ribs. "I thought if I just kept quiet, everything would eventually go back to normal. But it's been 2 years, and I don't think there's a normal to go back to." The kitten didn't answer, just settled more deeply into his lap, a warm weight that felt like permission to stay still. Daniel sat there until his shift ended, until the sky started to lighten at the edges and the kitten's siblings emerged from behind the unit to tumble over each other in mock battle. When he left, the mother cat watched him go with her 1.5 ears pointed forward, and Daniel thought maybe that was as close to understanding as anyone could offer. He was at the soup kitchen the next afternoon when the woman serving stopped mid-ladle and stared at him. Her eyes went wide. She glanced at the television mounted in the corner, then back at Daniel, then back at the television. On the screen, a local morning show was replaying the segment with Sophia. The camera zoomed in on the drawing, the scar, the tired eyes. "Oh my God," the woman whispered. "It's you." Other people were turning now. Someone said something he couldn't quite hear. Daniel stood frozen with his tray, every muscle locked. The room felt too small, too bright. Everyone was looking at him. Someone pulled out a phone. he heard the click of a camera shutter. "I have to go," he said, or thought he said. He couldn't hear his own voice over the rushing in his ears. He put the tray down with shaking hands and walked toward the door. Behind him, someone called out. Someone else said his name, which meant they'd already figured out who he was. It was over. Whatever thin anonymity he'd been clinging to was gone. He made it outside before his legs gave out. He sat down hard on the concrete steps, head between his knees, breathing too fast. The panic attack rolled over him in waves, familiar and horrible. He'd had them before in the months after his wife died. Back then, his daughter would sit beside him and count breaths. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. She'd learned it from a school counselor and appointed herself his breathing coach. He tried it now alone, but the numbers wouldn't come. He just sat there gasping until gradually, slowly, the world came back into focus. When he looked up, a small crowd had gathered. Not threatening, just watching. A man in his 30s with kind eyes was crouched a few feet away, not too close, giving him space. "You okay?" the man asked. "You need me to call someone?" Daniel shook his head. He didn't have anyone to call. That was the problem, wasn't it? He'd spent 2 years pruning connections until he was down to just himself, and now he was sitting on Soup Kitchen steps having a panic attack while strangers watched and probably filmed. Tomorrow he'd be a viral video. The day after, someone would write a think piece about trauma and isolation. They'd get it all wrong, but they'd be right about the important parts. "I'm fine," he lied. "Thank you." He stood on shaking legs and walked away. Nobody followed him, which was something. He made it back to his apartment and locked the door and sat on the floor with his back against it. His phone buzzed, text messages from numbers he didn't know. Someone had posted his phone number online. He turned the phone off and unplugged it and sat in the growing dark. That's when he heard the knock, soft, tentative. A woman's voice through the door. "Daniel, it's Sarah, your neighbor. I saw what happened at the soup kitchen. My niece posted it. I just wanted to make sure you're okay." Sarah. The woman who played her soap operas too loud. Daniel had never spoken to her beyond brief hallway nods. He didn't open the door. But he listened to her breathing on the other side, and after a moment she spoke again. "I lost my husband 3 years ago," she said. "Took me a long time to leave the apartment after. I get it. But you should eat something. I'm leaving a plate out here. No expectations. Just eat it if you want." He heard her walk away. Waited 10 minutes. Opened the door a crack. She'd left a covered plate of rice and chicken, still warm. He took it inside and ate it sitting on the floor, and it was the best thing he'd tasted in months. The video went viral by morning. Daniel Carver, 52, formerly employed maintenance supervisor, currently living alone in a studio apartment and eating at soup kitchens. The silent guardian, the kind stranger. The man who was so broken he couldn't even accept gratitude for a simple good deed. Think pieces appeared. Opinion columns. Debates about mental health and masculinity and the erosion of community. Everyone had a take. Nobody asked him. His brother called. Actually called, not just texted. Daniel stared at the phone screen until it went to voicemail. Then he listened to the message. His brother's voice was careful, measured. "Danny, I saw the news. Please call me back. I'm worried about you." "We all are. Emma's worried. She asks about you all the time. Please." Emma, his daughter. Daniel played the message 3 times just to hear her name in his brother's mouth. Then he deleted it, because keeping it felt like making a promise he didn't know how to fulfill. That night, he went to work at the storage facility like always. The manager was waiting for him at the gate. "You're famous," he said around his cigarette. "Cameras were here earlier. Told them you don't work here." "Thank you," Daniel said. The manager shrugged. "Nobody's business but yours. But if they come back, I can't lie for you forever. Just saying." The night felt different now that people were looking for him. Every shadow seemed significant. Every car that passed felt suspicious. He walked his rounds with his shoulders tight, waiting for ambush. The cats sensed his tension. They stayed hidden except for the gray kitten, who wound between his legs until he crouched down and scratched behind its ears. "What do I do?" he asked the kitten. It purred and head-butted his hand. Helpful. He was fixing a broken lock on Unit 12 when he heard a car pull up outside the gate. Then voices. A woman and a child. Daniel's stomach dropped. He knew before he saw them. Some part of him had been expecting this since the moment the drawing first appeared on television. They were standing at the gate looking in. The woman from the park, older and more tired-looking than he remembered, and Sophia, in jeans and a pink jacket instead of the yellow raincoat. She was holding something. As Daniel got closer, he saw what it was. Tico, the stuffed dog. "Mr. Carver," the woman called softly. "I'm Maria. This is Sophia. We don't want to bother you. We just wanted to say thank you. In person. If that's okay." Daniel stopped walking. He was maybe 20 feet away, close enough to see them clearly, too far to pretend he hadn't heard. The manager had come out of his office and was watching from the doorway. There was no escape, no graceful way to walk away from this. Sophia was staring at him with huge dark eyes. She held Tico against her chest the same way she had in the rain 6 weeks ago. Everything in Daniel wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't move, and Maria was opening the gate, and suddenly they were walking toward him, and it was too late. "I'm sorry," Maria said when they were close. "I know you probably didn't want this, but Sophia's been asking about you every single day. She needed to see you, to make sure you were real." Daniel's throat was tight. He couldn't look at Sophia, so he looked at the dog instead. One dark ear, red heart on the paw. "I'm real," he managed. His voice came out hoarse. "I'm sorry I didn't say thank you before," Sophia said. Her voice was so small. "In the park, you gave Tico back and then you left, and I didn't get to say it. So I want to say it now. Thank you. You saved my best friend." And there it was. The thing he'd been trying to avoid for 6 weeks. Simple gratitude from a 7-year-old who thought he'd done something heroic when really he'd just picked up a stuffed dog and handed it back, because that's what anyone would do. Except apparently it wasn't what anyone would do, or there wouldn't be articles and videos and drawings that went viral. Apparently, the smallest kindness was so rare now that it deserved recognition. Daniel crouched down, finally meeting Sophia's eyes. She was studying his face, comparing him to the drawing she'd made. "You got my scar right," he said. The words came out before he could stop them. "Most people don't notice it." Sophia smiled, shy but pleased. "You looked sad. In the park. I wanted to remember everything about you." "I was sad," Daniel said. The admission felt dangerous and necessary. "I still am most days. But what you said just now, that helped. So thank you." Maria's eyes were shining. She wiped at them quickly. "I told her we shouldn't track you down, that you obviously wanted privacy, but she wouldn't let it go. She kept saying you looked like you needed a friend." Daniel felt something crack in his chest. A 7-year-old child had looked at him in 30 seconds of rain and seen what he'd been trying to hide for 2 years. That he was drowning, that he needed help. And instead of turning away like everyone else, she'd drawn his face and put it on television and started a city-wide search, not because she wanted to thank him, but because she was worried about him. "I do need a friend," he said. His voice broke on the last word. "I need a lot of things. I've been pretending I don't for a really long time." The gray kitten chose that moment to emerge from behind Unit 12, meowing plaintively. Sophia's face lit up. "A kitty!" And just like that, the moment shifted. Sophia was crouching down, holding out her hand, whispering to the kitten the way children do. The kitten, fearless little thing, walked right up to her. Maria laughed, a surprised sound. Daniel felt himself breathe properly for the first time in what felt like weeks. "There's a whole family of them," he heard himself say. "That one's the bravest. The others hide." "Can I see them?" Sophia asked, and Daniel found himself nodding, leading them toward Unit 47 where the mother cat kept her nest. It was the strangest thing, showing them his small, secret world. The cats who'd learned to trust him, the storage facility where he worked nights, his boss, smoking in the doorway, who nodded at Maria like this was all completely normal. They stayed for 20 minutes. Sophia coaxed 2 more kittens out of hiding. Maria asked questions that were kind but not prying. She worked as a receptionist at a dental office. Sophia was in 2nd grade and wanted to be a veterinarian or an artist. She couldn't decide which. They lived in the apartment complex near the park, the one with the blue trim. Maria's mother helped with childcare while she worked. "I have a daughter," Daniel said suddenly. "Emma. She's 19. I haven't seen her in over a year." Maria nodded like this made sense. Like she'd already guessed there was something like this in his past. "Is that something you want to change?" Daniel looked at Sophia, who was holding the gray kitten now, its small body cradled carefully in her arms. "Yes," he said. "I think maybe it is." When they left, Maria pressed a piece of paper into his hand. Her phone number and address. "If you need anything," she said. "And I mean anything. Food. Someone to talk to. Help with those cats. Whatever. You call me. Promise." Daniel nodded, clutching the paper. He watched them walk back to their car, Sophia still looking back and waving. He stood there until their taillights disappeared, then walked slowly back to Unit 47. The mother cat was sitting in her usual spot, watching him. "I know," he told her. "I have to do something. I can't keep hiding." The cat blinked slowly, which he chose to interpret as agreement. He started with his brother, called him at 8 in the morning, which was too early, but if he waited, he'd lose his nerve. His brother answered on the 2nd ring, voice thick with sleep. "Danny?" "Yeah," Daniel said. "It's me." There was a long pause. Then, "Jesus Christ. I've been trying to reach you for months." "I know. I'm sorry. I wasn't ready." "Are you ready now?" Daniel thought about Sophia's drawing, about Maria's kindness, about the gray kitten purring in his lap at 3 in the morning, about 2 years of isolation that had almost killed him. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I'm trying." His brother's voice cracked. "That's enough. That's more than enough. What do you need?" They talked for an hour. His brother had a spare room. He could stay there while he got back on his feet. Emma was living nearby, attending community college. She'd been asking about him, wondering if he'd ever come back. "She's angry with me," Daniel said. "She has every right to be." "She's hurt," his brother corrected. "That's different, and she's been hurt a long time, but she'll forgive you if you let her. She's just waiting for you to show up." Daniel thought about walking away in the rain, about all the times he'd chosen silence over discomfort, about Sophia who'd refused to let him disappear even when that's all he wanted. "I'll come," he said. "Not today, but soon. I need to handle some things here first." "Whenever you're ready," his brother said. "The room's not going anywhere." The next call was harder. He stared at Emma's number in his phone for 20 minutes before finally pressing dial. It rang 4 times. He was about to hang up when she answered. "Dad?" She sounded exactly like her mother. That was the first shock. The second was that she'd answered at all. "Hi, sweetheart," he said, and then his voice gave out completely. Emma didn't speak right away. He could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, deciding something. Then, "Uncle Mike said you called him, that you're coming to stay for a while. If that's okay, if you don't want me to—" "I want you to," she said, cutting him off. "I'm still mad at you. I don't know if that's going to go away just because you show up, but I want you to come. They talked for 10 minutes. Careful small talk, testing the waters. She was studying graphic design. She'd gotten a job at a copy shop. She'd started dating someone casually. Each detail felt like a gift. His daughter's life, continuing without him but not completely closed off. I saw the video, she said before they hung up, of you at the soup kitchen, looking like you were about to pass out. That was pretty accurate, Daniel admitted. You look really thin, Dad. Yeah. You need to take care of yourself. That's not negotiable. If you come here, you have to actually eat and sleep and do the basic human things. Promise me. He almost laughed. His daughter, who'd been a child when he'd fallen apart, giving him instructions on self-care like their roles had reversed. Maybe they had. I promise, he said. After he hung up, he sat on his apartment floor and cried for the first time in months. Not quiet tears, but actual sobs. The kind that hurt his chest and made him gasp. All the grief he'd been holding back, all the shame and loneliness and fear, it came out in waves until he was empty. Sarah knocked on his door later that afternoon. She had more food, but also a newspaper. Front page, she said, handing it to him. You're famous again. The headline read, Silent Guardian Found. Formerly homeless man's simple act of kindness sparks nationwide conversation. The article got almost everything wrong. He wasn't homeless, just poor. He hadn't sought recognition, just tried to avoid it. But they got one thing right. Sophia's drawing had changed something. Not just for her, but for him. I'm leaving, he told Sarah. Moving in with my brother, trying to reconnect with my daughter. Sarah smiled. Good. That's good. But eat this first. You'll need your strength. The food was lasagna, homemade and still warm. They ate together at his tiny table, and Sarah told him about her late husband, about the year she'd spent barely leaving the house, about the neighbor who'd finally knocked and forced her to remember how to be human. You were that person for that little girl, Sarah said. But she was also that person for you. That's how it works. We save each other. Daniel finished his last shift at the storage facility 3 nights later. The manager paid him in cash, counted out carefully. You did good work, he said. If you ever need a reference, call me. The cats were the hardest goodbye. He'd arranged for Sarah to feed them. She'd agreed immediately, even seemed excited about it. But when the gray kitten climbed into his lap for the last time, Daniel had to fight the urge to pocket it, take it with him. Instead, he held it close, felt its tiny heartbeat, then set it down gently. Be good for Sarah, he told it. She'll take care of you. The mother cat watched from her spot near the unit. Daniel nodded to her, a gesture of respect. She'd been surviving out here long before he showed up. She'd be fine after he left. Maria and Sophia came to see him off. They brought a care package, sandwiches for the bus ride, a thermos of coffee, a drawing Sophia had made of Daniel sitting with the cats. So you don't forget us, Sophia said. I could never forget you, Daniel said, and meant it. This child had seen him at his lowest and refused to look away. She'd drawn his face and shown it to the world. She'd saved him without even meaning to. They stood on the curb outside his apartment building while he waited for his brother to arrive. Sophia held Tico naturally. She'd brought him everywhere since that night in the rain. Daniel thought about all the small things that had to align for this moment to happen. If he'd taken a different route through the park, if he'd chosen not to pick up the toy, if Sophia hadn't remembered his face, if she hadn't drawn it, if it hadn't gone viral. 1,000 tiny decisions that added up to this, a second chance. His brother pulled up in a blue pickup truck, and Daniel felt something shift in his chest. Fear, yes, but also hope. He loaded his few possessions into the truck bed, said goodbye to Maria and Sophia, hugged Sarah, who cried a little. Then he climbed into the passenger seat and looked at his brother. really looked at him, for the first time in 2 years. "You ready?" his brother asked. Daniel thought about Emma waiting at the house, about all the conversations they'd need to have, about the work of rebuilding trust after it's been broken, about learning how to accept help, to be vulnerable, to exist in community instead of isolation. "I'm ready," he said. The drive was 4 hours through flat countryside. They talked some, but mostly they were quiet, and it was a comfortable quiet instead of the heavy silence Daniel had been carrying. His brother had a playlist of old songs, stuff from when they were teenagers. Daniel found himself humming along, surprising himself. Emma was waiting on the porch when they pulled up. She didn't run to him, didn't throw herself into his arms. She stood there with her arms crossed, guarded and uncertain. Daniel understood. He'd given her every reason to protect herself. He walked up slowly. "Hi," he said, such a small word for such a big moment. "Hi," she said back, and then after a pause that felt eternal, "You look terrible." Daniel laughed, a real laugh that surprised them both. "Yeah, I know. Come on," she said, uncrossing her arms. "Uncle Mike made dinner. We should eat before it gets cold." It wasn't a reconciliation, not yet, but it was a beginning. They sat around the table, the three of them, and ate pot roast and vegetables. Emma talked about her classes. His brother told stories about the nephews Daniel had barely met. Daniel mostly listened, but sometimes he contributed a detail or observation, and nobody acted like it was strange or too much. They just let him back in, cautiously, with appropriate boundaries. After dinner, Emma showed him to the spare room. It was small but clean, with a window overlooking the backyard. "Bathroom's down the hall," she said. "Towels in the closet. If you need anything." "Thank you," Daniel said. "Not just for the room, for answering when I called, for giving me another chance." Emma's expression softened slightly. "You gave that little girl her toy back, even when you were barely holding it together yourself. That means something. It means you're still in there. The dad I remember." She left him alone to unpack. He had so few belongings it took less than 10 minutes. The drawing Sophia had made went on the dresser, propped against the wall. Daniel sat on the bed and looked at it. A man sitting with cats. Rough but recognizable. Evidence that someone had seen him. Really seen him. His phone buzzed. A text from Maria. "Safe travels, stay in touch. Sophia wants to know how the cats are doing." He texted back, "Arrived safe. Tell Sophia the cats miss her. Thank you for everything." Her response came immediately. "Thank you for being brave enough to let us help. That's the hardest part." She was right. Accepting help was harder than giving it. Walking away had been easy. Standing still and letting people care required a strength he was still learning to find. The next weeks were hard in ways he hadn't anticipated. His brother's house was noisy. The nephews were loud. Emma visited twice a week but kept her distance emotionally. Daniel started therapy with a counselor his brother recommended. He got a part-time job at a hardware store. He went to a grief support group where people talked about their dead spouses, and he tried not to compare their pain to his own. But there were good moments, too. Emma gradually thawed. She started staying for dinner more often. She showed him her design projects. Once, she hugged him before leaving, quick and awkward, but still. His brother took him fishing. They didn't catch anything, but they sat in companionable silence, and Daniel realized he'd missed his brother more than he'd let himself acknowledge. 2 months after moving in, Daniel got a message from Maria with a video attachment. Sophia had appeared on another local program, this time talking about the importance of kindness. She was wearing a pink dress and holding Tico. The interviewer asked if she'd heard from the silent guardian. Sophia's face lit up. "His name is Daniel. He moved away to be with his family. But he sends me pictures of cats. We're friends now." The interviewer asked what she'd learned from the experience. Sophia thought about it seriously. Sometimes people who help you are also people who need help. So if someone does something nice, you should check on them. Make sure they're okay too. Daniel watched the video 3 times. Then he called Maria. "She's a pretty wise kid," he said when she answered. "She gets it from her grandmother," Maria joked. "How are you doing? Really?" "Better," Daniel said. And it was true. Not perfect, not healed, but better. "I'm going back to school. Technical program for HVAC certification. My brother's helping pay for it." "That's wonderful. Sophia will be so happy. She asks about you constantly, wants to know when you're visiting." They made plans. Summer, maybe. He'd come back for a weekend. Stay with Sarah, who'd agreed enthusiastically when he'd called to ask. Visit the cats, who were thriving under her care. The gray kitten had been adopted by a neighbor, but the others were still there. Sarah had named them all after soap opera characters. When summer came, the visit felt surreal. The city looked different. Or maybe he was different. Sarah's apartment was filled with cat photos. Maria's family had him over for dinner. Sophia showed him her room, filled with drawings and stuffed animals. Tico had a place of honor on her pillow. They went to the park together, the place where it had all started. Sophia ran ahead to the playground while Maria and Daniel walked slowly. "I never thanked you properly," Maria said, "for what you did. Not just returning Tico, but for letting Sophia help you. A lot of adults wouldn't have let a child see them vulnerable." "I didn't have much choice," Daniel admitted. "But I'm glad I didn't run. She gave me a reason to stop disappearing." That evening, back at Sarah's apartment, Daniel pulled out his phone and recorded a short video. Just him, sitting in Sarah's kitchen, talking to the camera. "My name is Daniel Carver. A few months ago, a little girl drew my picture and put it on television because I returned her stuffed dog. People called me the Silent Guardian. They said I was a hero, but the truth is, I was barely surviving. I'd lost my wife, pushed away my family, given up on pretty much everything. That little girl didn't just want to thank me. She wanted to make sure I was okay. And because of her, I got help. I'm reconnecting with my daughter. I'm rebuilding my life. So here's what I learned. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness happen because that's all we can manage in that moment. But they matter. They ripple out in ways we can't predict. And sometimes the person who needs saving is the one who thought they were doing the saving." He paused, considering whether to say the next part, then decided yes. "If you've watched this far, maybe you're struggling too. Maybe you're isolated or grieving or just going through the motions. I want you to know that it's okay to not be okay. But it's also okay to accept help, to let people see you, to take the smallest step toward connection, even when it feels impossible. You don't have to be a hero. You just have to show up. That's enough." He posted the video on the community page where Sophia's drawing had first gone viral. Within an hour, it had 100 responses. People sharing their own stories, their own struggles, their own small moments of connection that changed everything. Emma called him that night. "I saw your video," she said. "Dad, I'm proud of you." Daniel's throat tightened. "I'm sorry I disappeared. After your mom died. I should have been there for you." "You were drowning," Emma said softly. "I get that now. I was angry for a long time, but I understand. You did the best you could. Now you're doing better. That's what matters." They talked until late, really talked, about grief and loss and the ways families break and heal. Emma cried. Daniel cried. It was messy and hard and necessary. When he hung up, Daniel walked to the window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Sophia was probably asleep, Tico clutched in her arms. Somewhere, the cats were prowling the storage facility, Sarah's food keeping them healthy. Somewhere, people were struggling alone, the way he had, and maybe his video would reach one of them. Maybe it wouldn't. But he'd put it out there anyway. His phone buzzed. Another text from Maria. Just 3 words. "You did good." He had. Not perfectly, not heroically, but honestly. He'd been broken, and he'd let himself be seen in that brokenness, and people had helped him anyway. That was the real story, not the silent guardian who walked away. The struggling man who let a 7-year-old care about him, who accepted help from neighbors and family, who slowly, painfully, learned to reconnect. The video kept spreading. More responses, more stories. Someone created a community support group based on the idea of checking in on people who helped you, making sure they were okay too. Sophia's wisdom, spreading outward like rings in water. A local magazine wanted to interview Daniel. A podcast reached out. He said no to most of it, but he said yes to one request, a schools program where he talked to kids about mental health and community. Sophia came to the first one, sitting in the front row with Tico on her lap. Afterward, a boy raised his hand. "My dad acts like you did, like he's far away even when he's there. What should I do?" Daniel thought about all the times Emma had tried to reach him. "Tell him you notice," he said. "Tell him you're worried. Tell him it's okay to not be okay. And if he can't hear it yet, tell someone else, a teacher or counselor or trusted adult. Because people who are drowning sometimes can't grab the rope on their own. They need help reaching for it." The boy nodded solemnly. After the presentation, his mother thanked Daniel with tears in her eyes. "I'll talk to his father," she said. "We've been trying to pretend everything's fine, but maybe it's time to stop pretending." These moments accumulated, small connections, honest conversations, people being brave enough to be vulnerable. It wasn't a movement, exactly, more like a shift, a reminder that kindness wasn't just about grand gestures, it was about showing up, paying attention, refusing to let people disappear. Sophia turned 8 that fall. Daniel video called from his brother's house to sing happy birthday. She showed him her cake, chocolate with pink frosting. "Look," she said, holding up a stuffed cat. "Mom got me this. It's gray like the one at the storage place. I named it Daniel." He laughed until he cried. "That's a great name," he managed. "I know," Sophia said seriously. "It's for brave people who help others and also need help themselves." Maria appeared on screen, smiling. "She has very specific definitions these days." After the call, Daniel sat with Emma on the porch. She was designing a logo for a local nonprofit. He watched her work, the way her hand moved across the tablet, confident and precise. His daughter, creative and strong and growing into herself. "I'm glad you're here," she said without looking up. "I know it's been hard, adjusting, but I'm glad you stayed." "Me too," Daniel said. And he was. Not every day was good. Some days the grief still hit like a wave. Some days he struggled to get out of bed. But he showed up. He went to therapy. He took his medication. He called his daughter. He texted Maria updates about his life. He video called Sarah to check on the cats. He showed up. And slowly, over months that turned into a year, life stopped feeling like something.